Today's meeting is going to be short. Good evening. Welcome to the Basalt Planning and Zoning.
Recording in progress.
Basalt Planning and Zoning meeting on Tuesday, November the 16th. Call to order at 6:04.
Okay.
Take a roll.
Bill Marin.
Yes.
Kyle Oberketter.
Yes.
Gino Rossetti.
Here.
Eric Volzek.
Here.
Michelle Tebow. Here. Rob Levitt is absent. Cindy Hirschfeld.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Excellent. First order of business is to approve the minutes from October the 5th. Are there any comments, changes? If not, I would take a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Do we have a second? So Bill and Gino, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? No. Minutes carry. First item on the agenda is proposed amendments to Chapter 16 in regards to the zoning of wireless communication facilities. And we're here for a presentation, I assume, from Jeff Conklin?
We're here for a presentation from Jeff, and if you could introduce Jolie, that would be great.
Jeff Conklin, town attorney. Here by Zoom is Jolie Denkinger. She's an associate in my office. Started working with us this fall, beginning of September. Comes from DC or was working in DC before working with our firm, and is here and helping on these matters because she has a lot of experience and background working in with the FCC and with wireless communication issues. So, and I wanted to have her get to know you guys a little bit. So I'm going to be pretty brief tonight. Tonight's just going to be an introduction of this topic, and then we'll be back in December to provide a more full presentation and get into some of the proposed amendments to the code. So you might remember 2 years ago the exhilarating presentation that was given on the subject of wireless communication facilities. For those of you that were here, not all of you were here, so you've missed out. And to implement and put into the town code a new section that regulates wireless communication facilities. And this is an area where the federal government through the FCC has adopted, basically preempted the field of law and adopted various rules and regulations that in particular importance now and for the town relate to the deployment of small cell facilities. And so the code that was put into place really regulated what are these different types of wireless communication facilities, where can they be located, what are the design standards that go along with them, spacing, height, all of that stuff. So that's all out in the code. Well, over the last 2 years, the FCC has changed its rules and regulations and issued different orders that now the municipalities are playing catch up with to make sure that their codes are consistent with federal law. And this is important for a couple of reasons to update the code. One is just to make sure we're consistent with federal law, and the FCC is kind of imploring that happen. And two is to make sure that we have good code on the books for when we're working with wireless providers and them trying to deploy their infrastructure in the town. And so what's in your packet is are some code provisions that really get at those FCC updates. And I'm really not going to say much more beyond that. What we in working with staff have been talking about is, all right, we want to use this opportunity in amending the code to make sure that we're addressing everything that we can and want to, and so we're doing this once and not doing kind of a series of updates with some other issues that have kind of come to our attention that we think would be prudent to regulate. Now, did you want me to get into anything beyond that?
I think we can.
I could say, for example, I guess, one thing that we're wanting to do through our design standards is incorporate historic structures into the code to ensure that those are protected to as much as possible. Maybe beef up our design standards a bit. And, one thing that kind of where the the image I have in my mind, and I think staff does as well when we're talking through these, is we want to protect Midland Avenue. We want to protect our downtown areas to ensure that there aren't any things that, to ensure aesthetically that they are protected, and we don't have obtrusive wireless communication equipment in the rights of way or on private buildings. So more to come. Just wanted to get your minds primed for this topic, and if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them. If there's other stuff you wanted me to hit on, I'm happy to do that.
Well, we've had the benefit of having a couple conversations with the city of Aspen, who's been a little ahead of us in terms of having the opportunity to maybe see more provider input, but to have more resources maybe to kind of delve into some of these things. And so just a couple things that we're exploring. One of them is this idea of how do you deal with landmark structures, and that one is probably a pretty good fix. The city of Aspen also requires, actually, we have a picture of the common thing that we're kind of seeing. We can show that on the screen. We want to show that. But one of the things is these devices include this suitcase. When you talk to them on the phone, they even call it a suitcase. It's kind of a cabinet that is associated with making the wireless work. And they have options of putting it high on the pole. They have options of putting it on the ground in the streetscape. And City of Aspen requires it to be underground. So we're gonna look into that, whether we should be requiring them to be located underground. We've had some discussions with one of the wireless providers, and we weren't requiring them to be underground. Our guidelines don't require that. We were actually thinking it looked better if it was kind of a side utility rather than being attached to the ground.
Don't they have some that look like mailboxes?
They have,
Yeah.
but the problem is the antenna has to be high. So particularly with our modern buildings, like in Willits, they're built so well that the wireless doesn't go through the building, so they have to have kind of this line of sight, which is one of the things that you could see with a lot of proliferation of the facilities. Another thing that we're just looking at is maybe some organization issues. The basic parameters and the procedures have to be in the code. City of Aspen has their design standards separate, and so we're gonna look in the advantages and disadvantages of doing that. City of Aspen's really specific. They're requiring that they be on their light poles, and that if the light pole structurally can't deal with it, that there's like a replacement pole. And so they have real clear design standards about what that looks like. So we're gonna look at kind of the pros and cons of how that works. Anything else, James, you think we should mention?
This is just a photo, and I got rid of my mic because we were having feedback problems.
And actually, why don't you grab the pointer too, because then you can show.
So, this is just kind of a generic photo of an antenna that's stuck on the top of a light pole. You would generally see these. Usually they're, painted the same color as a light pole, not in this circumstance, but this is just an example of a generic one, and here's kind of the backpack with the equipment on it that we said, we thought would be better in the streetscape than attached to a pole.
And show where the light fixture, again, would be. Is about right there would be our typical, like Willits light fixture would be there, and then this.
Then you have this sitting on top of the light pole. And, they can either be on top of a light pole or they can be standalone kind of lollipop deals that don't have a light on them. And so we've had providers kind of exploring both scenarios that we've heard from. And, other ideas that Aspen had out there is to, kind of have a program where they worked with building owners to potentially be able to get, a lease to be able to have telecom on top of the buildings to kind of eliminate the need for stuff like this. They haven't had any examples where that's really worked so far, but it's an interesting idea that I think, we're going to explore a little bit as well.
The designs that we're looking at, James, are we looking at them for Old Town, South, and Willits? So that they're consistent on all of them?
That's
Not
probably,
necessarily,
a
because,
discussion.
go ahead.
I was just going to say that's probably a discussion item because, it's quite a bit different character in Willits than it is here. So you might want to look at different treatments on the two.
Because the character is quite different from one to another, and
Yeah.
I just want to know what's being asked of us.
Nothing yet. We'll probably look at different scenarios and bring them back to you.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Have they not had any success with private building owners? Is it just harder to get in touch with people, and it's much easier just to come to a town and say, hey, like, this is what we want to do?
Yeah, and the federal law has provided that what are called alternative tower structures are a use by right in the rights of way and subject to design standards.
Okay.
But so there's probably an easier path to deployment there, and otherwise you're negotiating with a private landowner. But there's things that can be done in the code, I suppose, to kind of make it perhaps better for carriers to look into those private party relationships a bit more.
Are these in Aspen yet? Just out of curiosity.
No, they just approved their first application for 6 was just approved. So all of us, back in 2019, it was like they were coming our way and we were going to see them immediately. And you can speculate on the reasoning of why it's taken so long, but that is also, I think, it's too bad because it would be helpful to see their response on the lights and to hear the public's kind of response to that before we did ours, but that's not going to be possible because Aspen really clearly doesn't allow people to work in the winter, so they're not expecting these to be installed till like April.
I don't think we should expect these to be installed around here, down valley, anytime soon. I mean, we really didn't even get 4G that long ago.
You speak up.
Oh, we didn't even get 4G that long ago, and, I just, and they're
We
turning
do
off
have a-
3G, so I
There's an applicant in the pipeline, so to,
Yeah.
there's an application hasn't been fully submitted, but we've been talking to one provider on some deployment.
really, to actually
Mhm.
do this. That's
Yeah, and
surprising.
who knows, if they're going to jump in, after they get an approval. It's taken Aspen, 14 months in the
Yeah,
process?
and a lot of that was engineering coordination. Your approval process, one of the things, it has a shot clock in there, so once your application is complete, you have to have an answer. So that's why so much of it's an administrative review, because we don't have time to bring it to the P&Z. It's got to really be set up for staff to review.
And that was the big rush for getting the code on the books in 2019, is because the FCC issued this order creating these shot clocks. And so, which basically said, once a full application is submitted, you have so many days to process it. And in part was to facilitate an expedited deployment of 5G network. And, here we are 2 years later, and it's still, you're still not servicing Glenwood Canyon, so, whatever. So, yeah.
Who actually installs these? I mean, does each provider come in and install their own?
Yes,
It's
and you can't
Well-
mandate,
It depends on what we're talking. Sometimes the infrastructure, like maybe the pole, might be provided by somebody else. So say like Verizon or someone might have their own boxes, but some of the related infrastructure will oftentimes be built and then by someone else and then leased to the carriers.
Okay.
Yeah.
But what I was gonna say is that, we've always encouraged co-location of facilities so that you don't have you don't have Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile, whatever, Jitterbug or whatever the other ones are, just all in a row. But you can't mandate, if I understand it, you can certainly encourage it and have incentives and stuff like that.
But is there a general field or concept? How often would these appear? Are they 500 feet apart, 500 yards apart?
So the federal standard is that they have to be, you can set a spacing requirement, but in the event it's not technically feasible for a carrier to deploy their technology with that spacing, you basically have to reduce it to the extent that it would be technically feasible for them to deploy the technology. So, that will sometimes vary depending on location. And for example, if a building through which the signal may not pass or something, that complicates things. So it a little bit depends on geography, but that's the kind of the overarching standard.
I'm just trying to get a handle. Are you talking about 100 feet or 1,000 feet?
I think it's more like in that 500-foot ballpark. And is that kind of what we've thinking?
We have a requirement of at least 600 feet that can be waived if, it's not feasible.
I remember there was some distance, I was curious.
And so, yeah, more like the 400 to 500 foot ballpark is what we've heard.
And then it's completely up to them how far they want the service to go,
Yeah.
right? So there's no benefit for rural communities to ask, we need service up there for houses. They'd be like, yeah, no thanks. Like, there's no give or take there, I assume.
No, not really, I guess. Yeah. I'm trying to think. I'd be probably going out on a limb and trying to think of ways in which we could use a stick to require that sort of thing, at least in different areas, but yeah.
Yeah, I don't have service at my house, and I'm in the town limits.
I don't have service in lakeside townhomes. I mean, Willits doesn't have service. Maybe it's gotten a little better, but like,
It's gotten better, but it has its moments.
yeah.
So what will the follow-up meeting to this be?
It'll be a more detailed presentation on the changes, and then there'll be additional changes than from what you see in your packet now. In particular, likely with respect to historic structures and design standards, and there'll be a little bit more of a show to go along with it, with visuals and so forth. Yeah.
Because our conversations with City of Aspen were really helpful in terms of trying to figure out where the limits are to a certain extent.
Yeah, I think they might have different rules for the downtown area versus the residential
Yeah,
neighborhoods
for
and
sure.
whatnot. And so I think that might be useful for us as far as Midland Ave versus Willits and
Yeah.
other
Yeah.
areas.
So I think if there aren't any other questions, then we can let Jeff go. And Jolie? Jolie, thanks for joining us. Do you want to say?
I don't know if her hand is raised.
Oh, she does want to
Hi,
talk.
can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Hi, I don't think that I'm on video with the webinar format, but it's great to meet all of you by Zoom and to hear your questions and the discussion. And I'll look forward to meeting you in person, hopefully soon.
Perfect. Thanks, Jolie.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Susan, do we have action tonight on this, or
No, we were just thinking, no, you don't need to continue it because it's not a public hearing, so, right, we don't need to have any action.
Nope. That's it.
Any other questions or comments at this point? Let Jeff
All right.
Vamonos.
Thanks, guys. Good
Thanks,
seeing
Jeff.
everyone.
Thank
Have a good Thanksgiving if I don't see you.
You too.
Thank you. You too.
So the next item on the agenda is commissioner comments and staff updates.
I have a question.
Uh-huh.
Couple weeks ago, I got a visit from Basalt's Finest about my trash and the Wildlife Protection Act, and a warning because the trash company didn't pick up my trash that day. Is that how it works? If the trash doesn't get picked up that day,
Right. So you can only take your trash out the day that trash is being delivered. Otherwise, it needs to be secured in a wildlife-resistant container that meets all those requirements. So if for some reason they don't pick it up, you need to haul it back in and get it in a secure location.
well, my trash pickup is at like 5 o'clock, so if they miss it and it's after dark, I'm out of compliance with the law. That's kind of weird. Just,
Well, they don't know when, they don't have a schedule of when you're picked up, but I don't know the particular circumstances, but I'm just responding that, yes, that's
Yeah.
the way that's the way the ordinance reads.
So-
And,
if I don't notice that the trash is picked up from the trash time, I could wind up getting a citation.
yep,
Okay.
sorry.
Wouldn't you bring your trash can in at night anyway, even if it's picked up?
It's a quarter mile from my house.
Oh.
I work at home, so I don't always know if it get picked up or not.
That's why you have kids. Well, in terms of updates, our plan was just to meet on December 7th, hopefully, and have only one meeting. And we have 3 applications. They're the 2 site visits we had, the ADU at Simi Hamilton and Marge and Doug McDonald's application. And then we also have an application from Heather's regarding a more weathered year-round pergola that they can put up. So we have a requirement that a temporary structure can only be up 180 days, or then you have to meet the code. And so they've just been working with the fire department and the building department, and so you'll see that. So those are our land use applications. We're moving forward with the projects associated with the bond passing. We've been working on nothing really earth-shattering from our discussion from last meeting. We're working on the request for proposals for the Midland Avenue design. They're doing the survey work. If you hear that drones have been on Midland Avenue, that was one of the first steps, is to do some initial surveillance with use of drones. Affordable housing, the town did a RFP, a request for proposals for a real estate broker to help us. And the town picked Ted Borschelt, and he's the realtor. I think most of you probably know Ted, works out at Aspen Sotheby. Ted helped us with our transaction when we sold the Shining Mountain Way affordable housing units that we owned in Old Snowmass. He and Yana Dillard were our realtors. We have a request for proposals for our photovoltaic, to look at different sites for solar, and hopefully we can have a partnership with the schools. We're having a brainstorming meeting tomorrow on affordable housing too, just like what are our next steps. We had identified properties that were inside our urban growth boundary. So we're gonna meet and brainstorm on that. We've had interested property owners, kind of contact, seeing the first of that, where, we have people that are contacting us. So I think those are kind of the highlights of that. A lot of our other work is associated with the just building permits. So we have, all the building permits are in for the Basalt River Park. Where they're calling, the Makerspace building is now called the Gallery Building, and so it's in for a permit, hoping to give them an excavation permit in the next couple of days. They have a pretty aggressive schedule. 5 of the townhomes have full building permits and everything else is in. And so the only property that isn't under construction is the town-owned property, that parcel E that was gonna be used from the art base. Stotts Mill has submitted building permits for all 4 of the multifamily buildings. They can't get building permits for all 4 of them right now because they had some things they had to do before, when the 57th unit, kind of triggered some substantial completion of some improvements. Lot J is in front of the town council. Its second reading is scheduled for December. That might be pushed off. It turned out that a little corner of the building, when you got really detailed, a little corner of the building ended up being in the floodplain, floodway, so they needed to do a Lomar R. We also have a RFP out for a child development center on parcel 2E, which is the parcel that we own in front of Taka. And we also are working on an RFP for a provider to help us get funding for that. We're working.
To call, where?
Where on Willets Lane, if you're heading towards the single-family neighborhood, there's a property that's right across from Taka. It's 2 acres, but just a little over an acre of it is developable. The rest of it's wetlands. So it's right on Lewis. It's at the corner of Lewis and Willets Lane. Right there, it's sandwiched between Taka and then the wetlands. There's wetlands, and then there's the single-family homes.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And we're working on code amendments, building regulations, some code amendments on that. What else should we mention, James?
Working on quite a few complaints, zoning complaints, out there.
Why don't you come back up?
Lighting complaints.
A lot of lighting complaints.
No TVs on people's decks.
I haven't had that in a while.
And BCC was approved, and, I sent you the revised architecture. So both Tim Belinsky and Andrew Light are already starting to think about their final plan application, and the final plan application for Cypress Meadows Parcel 5 is being worked on.
No, I'm not sure if I'm interrupting you.
No.
But the 3 applications that you talked about, is that what we're going to discuss on December 8?
Yes,
And that's still on.
that's still on. And is it December 7th? It's December 7th. I might have messed you guys up on dates. It's the first
Yeah, 7th.
Tuesday in December.
The second question I had, when out at the construction going on opposite the high school, is the children's care, is that in that project still or not?
Yes, and that's one of the things that they have to build the core and shell before they get like 58 units.
That hasn't changed then?
That hasn't changed. They may or they may not ask for some timing changes on when they have to deliver that, but that's still part of it.
They're working on the design.
Good.
Yeah.
With the bearing down of the winter pretty soon, is the park construction on schedule? Or do you think that they're going to get held up, or?
So the park construction is pretty much on target. We have that contract with Walters, So we broke it up into 2 phases, basically. This phase was doing all the hardscape.
Right.
And so all they have left to do is they're finishing off the rock wall that's adjacent to Midland Avenue, and then there's some kind of pods of areas to picnic that they're gonna construct over by the river. And we have a RFP out for requests for landscape material, because we wanted to get people who supply landscape materials to go ahead during the winter and grow it for us. So that's out there, and that's out in the public seeking that. And then our consultants are working on the details of the bid documents for the second phase, which will start basically as soon as the weather cooperates in the spring. One of the complications, and it's probably too much information for you, but since all that area adjacent to the developments under construction, that needs to finish off before, we finish off the park. So we have some coordination to do between the town and the developer in terms of how that interface is gonna work. Because they need to have a little bit, their overdig area is in the park.
The last question I have, if you don't mind, is
Yep.
I'm curious, I get a lot of people nibbling at us, saying we're making a mistake by allowing the, I forgot the gentleman's name, who's asking to do the expansion behind the condo project, which is coming in off of 2 different roads. You know what I'm talking about?
Parcel 5.
Thank you. And I drove out there to understand what this lady's problem was. I mean, it wasn't a problem, it was just shouting in my ear. She didn't know I took my hearing aid out, but it didn't work too badly. But I drove out there and I see that there is all the road prep. There's concrete and curbs coming in off the thing. Where were these people when this was all approved?
Sorry,
We
which-
found,
Which property?
so we're talking about Sobers Meadows Parcel 5, and when it left,
Wasn't it between 2 and 3? The entrance?
Parcel 5 has, that was the one that you had a comment on, because it had the potential for, where it was really left is the 3 access points. I think it left here with the 2, one off of Evans Road and one that would come back through by the Lakeside Townhomes. And we were thinking that the one off of Willits would just be an emergency. It kind of left the town council that all 3 openings would be open and disperse the traffic with all 3 openings. But the residents of Park Modern are some of them are obviously, they're not wanting it to go through on Evans.
But it wasn't approved by anybody as just an emergency exit, is it, onto Willits?
No, that's how it left P&Z. The town council kind of approved it as a regular access. So there would be 3, so you disperse the traffic between, you disperse the traffic with 3, one on Willits, one on Evans, and
Okay.
one on Lakeside.
They don't want it on Evans, so they don't want you to go through the middle of the current Park Modern, even though that road is shown on a Google map.
Correct.
Correct, and it was shown on all the real estate,
Yep.
all the real estate advertisings and everything that was shown. Yep. Anything else you guys have questions on?
Susan, did you say in your recap before that the town had sold affordable housing? And can you
We
remind me what that was
yeah.
about?
The town acquired Rocky Mountain Institute was out in Old Snowmass,
Oh, right.
and they had 6 affordable housing units. So the town did kind of a complicated transaction when RMI built, and we acquired those 6 townhomes. And then I think that the town really struggled with those townhomes, being the fact that they were hard to maintain for the town because we had to have Public Works go out there, and the age of them, they caused a lot of maintenance, and they were outside our urban growth boundary, and they weren't by traffic, by BRT, by RAFTA, and they were in the rural area in the town. At the time, we were somehow, there was some financing that was attached maybe later, that we had like a line of credit that we were paying interest, and the interest rates were really high. So it was kind of an overburden. We decided to, invest our resources like in town. So we ended up selling them. And the good news is, the great news, it all worked out okay. It honestly did. Because the Aspen School District bought those units, and that's actually a better situation, because I think they have better resources to deal with some of the other items associated with the property. There was a well.
So it's teacher housing now.
Yeah, it's teacher housing now, which is great. I mean, it would have been hard to lose that to the private sector, but,
Yeah,
it was a good,
a win-win.
ended up okay, yep.
Is there any discussion regarding the tree farm and just the impact, and I guess everything in traffic and just multiple jurisdictions and the people coming together to talk or plan ahead, or are we just gonna just get bombarded? I know the tree farm is out of our thing, but it's happening.
Well,
so
we, I think the town tried as much as we could with our referral comments, and we attended all the meetings. We weren't silent. We were very vocal about it, and,
And I shouldn't isolate the tree farm, because we also,
yeah.
Yeah.
the whole area is gonna
Yeah.
have a lot more
Wasn't there a
people.
group that David Myler put together to talk about, like a couple of years ago, to talk about larger?
Well, David Weiler's group
issues
is a regional group that's concentrated on affordable housing.
Affordable housing,
yeah.
oh, okay.
Yeah. Now that it might be time to, we wanted to have more regular meetings with the P&Zs. So we had a meeting with the Roaring Fork Valley Regional Planning Commission before we did the master plan, and we had one on Picken County, and we should probably think about having another one. It's nice to meet in person, other than meeting in Zoom. I think it's a little hard to meet in Zoom when you don't know people. So that's something that we could think about. It's a tough situation, because we have made our views known, and it's just a tough situation. Anything
And
else?
again, I shouldn't isolate the tree farm. There's
No,
there's
no,
a ton
there's
of other
the-
stuff
yeah,
going on in it, but
yeah.
it's light to light now every day between, the three lights from basically Basalt all the way through Willits now.
Not getting any better.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I took advantage of an opportunity to walk around the site that they're doing, breaking out for the hotel, and so far, everything I see is really first class. They're just, both the construction and the design of the planning and so forth. I know we don't want to hear all that, but they're at least doing it first class. I don't know what the hell's going to happen when the cars hit the highway, but internally, it's quite nicely done so far.
We have a nice partnership going on right now with putting some fiber in the highway corridor.
is that what's going on
Yeah,
there?
yeah, we're putting some fiber, town's contributing some money. We took money that was required by the Willits developer. Tree Farm had some obligations, and so we had we had a good relationship in packaging that together.
And that's allowing the traffic lights to talk to each
Yeah.
other. They don't,
Okay.
Yeah.
so, not
So-
so well.
Anything
20
else?
years ago, Ralph Trapani told the town, and right in this room, that the traffic out there would be like West Colfax at rush hour. And everyone goes, no. And sure it is. He was right.
Well, we can go ahead and adjourn and.
Absolutely.
A motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn. Do we have a second?
A second.
Cindy, all in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned at 6:45.
All right.
Pretty decisive leader.